Hello. My name's Odessa. The night I thought we were finally safe, I got a text that shattered me. My mother-in-law had stolen my daughter's medical fund, every cent I'd worked myself sick to save, and gambled it all away in Las Vegas. Her message? It was just for fun. She'll be fine. But nothing about this was fun. My little girl's future was on the line, and I was left holding a phone that felt heavier than my own heart. Before we dive in, tell me, what time are you listening, and where are you? Drop a comment below. I want to know. Because as you hear my story, you'll wonder, if it were your child's life hanging in the balance, what would you have done? I had just gotten home from another long shift at the clinic, the kind where your body feels heavier than it should, and every step toward the front door feels like dragging through wet sand. The house was quiet, too quiet for early evening. Maribel was at the dining table, her homework spread out in front of her, pencil tapping against the margin as she worked through equations I barely remembered from school. I smiled faintly. She was always so focused, so much older than her 13 years in the way she carried herself. I kicked off my shoes and set my bag on the counter, reaching automatically for my phone. I didn't expect much. Maybe a reminder from the pharmacy or a message from one of the nurses asking me to cover a shift. But the screen lit up with something else, something that didn't make sense at first glance. The text came from Lorraine. Don't freak out. I borrowed Maribel's medical fund for a little Vegas fun. She'll be fine. For a moment, I didn't breathe. My eyes scanned the words again and again, waiting for them to rearrange into something logical, something less horrifying. But they didn't. The message stayed the same, each word stabbing sharper with every reread. I gripped the counter edge, the cool surface grounding me as the room tilted. That money, it wasn't just dollars in an account. It was nights I'd skipped dinner so Maribel could have her therapy. It was double shifts that left me aching in my bones, weekends where I promised her we'd go out but couldn't because I was too exhausted. It was security, hope, a lifeline for the surgery she needed. Mom? Maribel's voice cut through the ringing in my ears. You look pale. What's wrong? I locked the phone screen quickly, as if hiding it could undo the damage. Nothing, I said too fast, too sharp. She tilted her head, studying me with those wide hazel eyes that had always seen more than I wanted her to. That didn't sound like nothing. I sat down across from her, my fingers trembling as I unlocked the phone again and slid it toward her. It's your grandmother, I whispered. She took the money. The medical fund. Maribel blinked, confusion flickering, then something steadier. She read the text, her lips pressing into a thin line. No tears, no panic, just a long, slow breath. Finally, she reached across the table and laid her hand over mine. Don't worry, Mom, she said softly, her voice steadier than I could manage. I'll handle it. The words struck me harder than the text had. She was 13. 13. She shouldn't have had to say that. Shouldn't have had to look stronger than her own mother in a moment like this. Shame burned hot in my chest. I had let this happen. I had trusted Lorraine, even when my gut told me not to. And yet, staring at my daughter, I felt awe too. There was steel in her calm, a quiet determination I hadn't seen before. I tried calling Lorraine. Once. Twice. The calls went straight to voicemail. I left no message. I didn't trust my voice not to crack. Didn't trust my words not to come out as a scream. The sun dipped lower outside, the suburban street settling into that hush between dinner and bedtime. The world looked the same, but inside me everything had shifted. My phone still sat on the table, the text glowing back at me like a cruel joke. I typed a reply, my fingers moving fast, words spilling out. How could you do this? That was for Maribel. She needs that money. But I didn't hit send. My thumb hovered, shaking, then pulled back. Maribel squeezed my hand again, her eyes unblinking, her small frame carrying the kind of courage I wished I had. I closed my eyes for a moment, just to steady myself, then reopened them to the same message still burning on the screen. That night, long after Maribel had gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the unsent reply, my phone dimming and lighting again in an endless cycle. My chest ached with the weight of what had been stolen, not just the money, but the trust, the safety I thought we had. And as I finally dragged myself to bed, one thought refused to leave me. As I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling in the dark, my mind wouldn't quiet. Every time I closed my eyes, that text flashed back across my thoughts, those words cutting deeper than I wanted to admit. By the time the first light crept in through the blinds, I hadn't slept a wink. My head throbbed, and my eyes felt raw from holding back tears. I dragged myself out of bed, expecting to find the house still quiet. Instead, I smelled toast. I followed the faint clatter into the kitchen, and there she was, Maribel, sitting at the table with her school laptop open, a spiral notebook beside it. She was scribbling like she was working on some kind of homework project. "You're up early," I murmured, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't even look up, just said calmly, "I couldn't sleep either." I walked closer and saw the pages she was filling. My chest tightened. It wasn't math problems or a history essay. She had columns labeled Grandma's Habits, Vegas Trips, Spending Patterns. She even had arrows connecting notes about credit card charges and a list of casinos Lorraine bragged about over the years. "Maribel," I said softly, sliding into the chair across from her. "Sweetheart, this isn't your job. You don't need to carry this burden." She finally looked at me, her eyes clearer than mine. "She hurt me too, Mom. That money wasn't just numbers on a screen, it was hope. And she doesn't get to just walk away." Her words hit me straight in the gut. For a second, I saw myself at her age. I remembered overhearing my parents argue about bills, about a relative who borrowed money that never came back. I remembered being told, "Stay out of grown-up matters." I had stayed silent then, swallowing my questions, and I promised myself I'd never let my child feel that same powerless silence. Yet here we were. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed against the counter. I glanced at it and saw the family group text light up. Lorraine had posted a photo, her holding a cocktail, casino lights glittering behind her. The caption read, "Lucky night, feeling blessed." My stomach twisted. My fingers itched to type something, anything. I wanted to scream in that chat, to call her out in front of everyone, but my thumb froze above the screen. Maribel leaned closer, her voice low but firm. "Don't answer. Let her think we're powerless. She'll slip if she believes we're not watching." The calm in her tone unnerved me. She was 13, yet she was thinking like a strategist. I swallowed hard, putting the phone down face first on the table. "Maribel," I whispered, "you're a kid. You shouldn't have to be the one figuring this out." She slid her notebook toward me. "Maybe. But you told me once that sometimes kids see things adults miss." "I've been listening, Mom." Every time Grandma bragged about her trips, every time she whispered on the phone when she thought I wasn't paying attention, I wrote it down. I opened the notebook, my hands trembling. My breath caught as I flipped through the pages. She had screenshots of Lorraine's social media posts, notes about dates when bank notifications had come in late at night, even scribbles about which casino her grandmother preferred. And then I saw it, a plan. Not just random notes, but a clear outline. She had steps. Track her posts. Save every bank alert. Contact casino with Mom's approval. For a moment, I couldn't speak. My little girl, sitting in her pajamas with her hair still messy from sleep, was staring down the storm Lorraine had unleashed and refusing to blink. I reached out and covered her hand with mine. "You amaze me," I said, my voice breaking. She gave me a faint smile. "We're in this together, Mom." I squeezed her hand, my heart aching with both pride and dread. Because as much as I admired her courage, I knew the path we were stepping onto wasn't going to be easy or safe. But nothing prepared me for the message that landed in my inbox later that day. It was a little past noon. I had tried to keep busy, folding laundry, rinsing dishes that didn't really need washing, anything to stop my mind from circling back to the gnawing ache in my chest. The house felt too quiet without Maribel. Even the hum of the refrigerator sounded loud, pressing in on me. I sat down with a lukewarm cup of coffee and opened my laptop, thinking maybe I'd check some work messages. That's when I saw it. The subject line glared back at me in bold. Your account activity may indicate fraud. My breath stalled. For a second, I convinced myself it was just spam, but my hands moved on their own, clicking the email open. The words blurred, but the numbers were sharp enough to slice right through me. Multiple transactions flagged, casino charges, hotel stays, designer boutiques I'd never stepped foot in, all tied to the account meant for Maribel's medical fund. The account I had built penny by penny, meal skipped by meal, double shifts stacked one after another, tens of thousands. My vision swam. Nearly everything was gone. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and dialed the bank. The hold music seemed to mock me, its cheerful tune so far from the chaos in my chest. When a representative finally answered, I stumbled over my words, trying to explain, "This money, it's my daughter's medical fund. You don't understand, it was for her surgery." The rep's voice was calm, professional, like they were reading from a script. "Ma'am, I see several withdrawals made using a linked debit card. It appears to be under the name Lorraine." My stomach lurched. "Lorraine?" I could barely breathe. "I never authorized her. I never—" The rep hesitated. "The account was linked some time ago. You may want to check with your family. Do you want me to freeze the account now?" "Yes," I choked out. "Please." "Do whatever you can." But then came the words I dreaded. The investigation could take several weeks, possibly longer. Funds may not be recoverable until it's resolved. Weeks. My head spun. Weeks. We didn't have weeks. I pressed my forehead into my hand, tears burning at the corners of my eyes. And then it hit me, like a cruel memory unspooling. My late husband's voice, months before he passed. "Let Mom help manage the funds, Odessa. It's family. You can trust her." Trust. That word now felt poisonous. When the call ended, I sat in silence, the weight of bureaucracy pressing down on me like a lead blanket. My phone rang again, this time Maribel's number flashing across the screen. I swallowed hard and answered, trying to steady my voice. "Mom?" she whispered, her voice low like she didn't want her classmates to overhear. "Baby," I managed, my throat tight. "It's worse than we thought. The money, most of it's gone." There was a pause. Then her voice, calm and unshaken. "Don't cry, Mom. This just proves she's desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. We'll use that." Her steadiness nearly broke me. I bit my lip, trying to keep the sob from escaping. "You're stronger than I am right now," I whispered. "No," she said firmly. "I'm strong because of you." We stayed silent a moment before she had to hang up for class. I sat there staring at the wall, clinging to her words like a lifeline. Just as the quiet settled again, my phone buzzed with a new message. My stomach dropped when I saw the name. It was from Lorraine. The photo was blurry, but the meaning was clear. Stacks of poker chips, her hand holding a cocktail glass, and beneath it the words, "Jackpot, baby. Don't worry. I'll replace it someday." I stared at the screen, my blood boiling. This wasn't just theft. It was a slap in the face, a taunt. My fingers tightened around the phone until my knuckles whitened. My chest rose and fell like I'd run a marathon. That was the moment I realized. Lorraine wasn't just gambling with money. She was gambling with my daughter's future, with the life we had fought so hard to keep steady. and something inside me snapped. That was the moment I knew. Silence would destroy us. I had to act. By the time the sun began to dip behind the rooftops, I sat hunched over the desk in my home office, pulling out file folders I hadn't touched in years. My hands moved with determination, though my chest ached with fear. Maribel's future was buried in these papers somewhere, and I had to find it before Lorraine buried us both. The drawer stuck as I yanked it open, and I had to give it a firm tug before the old metal screeched in protest. Inside was a thick folder labeled in my handwriting, Maribel's Medical Fund. I ran my hand over it like it was a fragile relic. As I flipped through the pages, my heart began to pound harder. Bank statements, deposit slips, printed reminders from the clinic about projected costs, all neatly filed. But when I reached the last section, the breath in my lungs caught. The signature page was missing. The very one that would have required my consent for any outside party to access the account. Gone. I closed my eyes, and suddenly I was back in that night, years ago. Lorraine's voice filled my ears. Honey, let me keep these papers safe. You're always so busy, and I don't mind the responsibility. At the time, I had been grieving, exhausted from shifts at the clinic, and foolishly grateful for the help. Now I saw it clearly. It hadn't been help. It had been a setup. I sat there, shaking, clutching the folder like it might disappear if I let go. For a moment, I wanted to scream, to march to her house and throw the evidence in her face. But then I thought of Maribel's steady voice. Desperate people make mistakes. We'll use that. I wasn't going to blow this chance with anger. I needed proof. Quiet, undeniable proof. By early evening, I grabbed my coat and the folder, tucking it into a plain canvas bag. The library was just a few blocks away, and I knew the public computers there would let me dig without drawing attention. The fluorescent lights of the library hummed softly when I walked in. The smell of old paper and carpet cleaner hung in the air. I forced myself to breathe slowly, pretending I was just another mom stopping by to pick up a book. Behind the desk, a kind-looking librarian with silver hair glanced up. She noticed the tension in my face, I could tell. Without asking too many questions, she came over while I sat at the computer, my papers spread discreetly. You look like you could use a little help, she said gently. I hesitated, but then nodded. I'm looking up property and financial records. Family matter. She gave me a look that wasn't prying but knowing, and quietly pulled a few reference books from the shelf, sliding them toward me. Start here. Don't worry. I'll give you space. For the first time that day, I felt a flicker of respect from someone. A stranger treating me with more dignity than my own family. I sifted through digital archives, printing out every transaction Lorraine had left a trace of. Casino visits in Vegas, hotel check-ins, even utility bills tied to a rental condo she clearly hadn't told anyone about. Piece by piece, her arrogance became my ammunition. Just as the printer whirred, my phone buzzed in my bag. I pulled it out, half afraid it was another mocking message from Lorraine. Instead, it was Maribel, calling quietly from her friend's house. Mom, she whispered, I just overheard Grandma on the phone. She was laughing, saying you'd never dare report her. She said you're too scared of looking weak. The words made my blood run cold. My grip tightened around the stack of papers I'd just pulled from the printer. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then I whispered back, steady and low. Then she doesn't know me at all. There was a pause, and then I heard Maribel's small, fierce voice. That's my mom. When I hung up, my hands no longer shook. That night, back at home, I carefully scanned each record into a password-protected folder on my laptop. I labeled everything, printed duplicates, and slid them into a separate envelope I hid where no one but me would think to look. Lorraine had counted on me being silent, on me staying small. But she had no idea I had already started building the case that could bring her down. But the real test came when I finally confronted her face to face. Driving to Lorraine's house, I could feel my pulse pounding against the steering wheel. The suburban streets blurred past, familiar yet foreign, as if the air itself knew something explosive was about to happen. I'd been here dozens of times before, but never with this kind of fire in my chest. Maribel sat beside me, quiet, her eyes fixed out the window. She'd begged me to come along, insisting she could handle it. I wasn't sure if I was strong enough to refuse her. By the time we pulled up, the midday sun was unforgiving, beating down on the neat row of manicured lawns. Lorraine's house looked almost smug, with its spotless hedges and pristine driveway. I parked, took a deep breath, and squeezed Maribel's hand before we stepped inside. Lorraine greeted us at the door with a smile too sweet to be real. "Well, well, if it isn't my favorite little family. Come in. Don't stand out there like beggars." Her tone dripped with mock affection. The smell of strong coffee and stale cigarette smoke clung to the air. On the kitchen counter, receipts and casino vouchers were scattered like trophies. She didn't bother to hide them. I took in the sight, each slip of paper another stab in my chest. "Sit down," Lorraine said, waving toward the table as if she owned not only the house, but my very spine. "I imagine you're here to talk about money." I steadied my voice, laying the folder on the table. "I found the paperwork, the ones tied to Maribel's medical fund." Her smile faltered for half a second before returning, sharper this time. She leaned back in her chair. "Those don't prove a thing. You've always been too naive to handle money, Odessa. Somebody had to keep it from rotting in an account while you played nursemaid." Maribel shifted uncomfortably beside me, her small hands curling into fists in her lap. I saw the flicker of hurt in her eyes and wanted to shield her from every word, but Lorraine wasn't finished. "You think saving for her was worth all that sacrifice?" Lorraine scoffed, her eyes darting at Maribel. "That money was wasted on a sick kid anyway. Kids get sick all the time. She'll survive." The words cut deeper than any knife. For a moment, rage surged through me so fiercely I thought I might explode right there. But instead of yelling, I lowered my hand into my jacket pocket and pressed record on my phone. My fingers trembled, but my face stayed calm. "That's how you really feel?" I asked softly, watching her eyes narrow. "Of course," she said without hesitation. "You've always been dramatic. Money is meant to be used, not hoarded for pity projects. She'll grow up, and she'll forget all this." Maribel gasped quietly, her voice cracking. "Grandma?" But I touched her hand under the table, silencing her. The front door creaked, and Raoul stepped inside. His timing was almost cruel. Lorraine's smile grew instantly saccharine. "Oh, Raoul," she said sweetly. "Just in time. Odessa's in one of her moods again. She's accusing me of stealing. Can you believe it?" He looked between us, confused and tired, as though walking into a storm he hadn't expected. "What's going on?" Lorraine pointed at me with a theatrical sigh. "She's hysterical. She's making things up again. You know how she gets." My throat tightened, but I forced my gaze to meet his. "Then listen for yourself." I pressed play. The recording filled the kitchen, Lorraine's own voice spilling out. "That money was wasted on a sick kid anyway. Kids get sick all the time. She'll survive." Raoul froze. His eyes flicked from me to his mother, disbelief clouding his face. For the first time, the confidence in Lorraine's posture cracked. She shifted uncomfortably, her lips tightening. "Raoul," she started, her voice higher now, the syrupy sweetness slipping. But he cut her off, his tone low. "Did you really say that?" Lorraine's hands fluttered, searching for a defense. "It was taken out of context. You know how she twists things. She's always been too sensitive." I stayed silent, letting the recording speak for itself. The look on Raoul's face told me everything. He couldn't unhear it. Shame washed over him, heavy and undeniable. Lorraine finally realized what had happened. She wasn't in control anymore. She glanced at me, and for the first time, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. I stood slowly, gathering the papers back into the folder. My voice was steady, almost calm. You thought I'd stay quiet forever. You were wrong. The kitchen felt charged, the air heavy enough to choke on. Lorraine's mask had slipped, and Raoul's silence confirmed it. For years, she'd banked on me being the weak one, but not today. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and looked at Maribel, whose small, determined face mirrored my own resolve. We left the receipts scattered on the counter, a battlefield of paper. Lorraine sat frozen, her hands gripping the edge of the table, her mouth working silently like she was searching for the next move. But I didn't know Lorraine had her own counterattack planned. The next morning, I woke with a knot in my stomach. I hadn't really slept. Every creak of the house made me think Lorraine might somehow already be inside, ready with her smug smile and venomous words. When I finally pulled myself from bed, Raoul was already at the kitchen table, his face pale, a single envelope gripped in his hands like it was burning him. He looked up, eyes shadowed. This came overnight, hand-delivered. I reached for it, my fingers trembling before I even tore it open. The letterhead hit me first. A law firm. My chest tightened as I scanned the words, each sentence slicing into me. Lorraine had filed a formal claim against me. She was accusing me of mismanaging Maribel's medical fund and, the words blurred for a moment, emotionally abusing my own daughter. I stared, numb, until the last line made my blood run cold. Further harassment of Ms. E. Lorraine Harrington may result in a custody review regarding minor child Maribel Harrington. I sank into the chair across from Raoul, my breath shallow. She's trying to take her away from me. Raoul rubbed his forehead, his voice thin. She wouldn't go this far, would she? I mean, it's Lorraine. She pushes, but she would, I cut in, sharper than I meant. You saw her yesterday. You heard what she said. He hesitated, his mouth working like he wanted to agree but couldn't bring himself to. That hesitation hurt more than the letter itself. From the hallway, a door creaked. Maribel appeared, still in her pajamas, her hair a messy halo. She must have overheard because her voice was fierce, sharper than I'd ever heard. She's lying, Dad. She doesn't care about me. She only cares about her bets. Raoul flinched, his eyes darting between us. Maribel, sweetheart. This is complicated. I just need some time to think. Time? Her voice cracked. She's stealing everything from us, and you need time? I stood quickly, pulling her into my arms before she said more. Raoul turned away, staring out the window like the trees might give him answers. The distance between us felt like an ocean, one I wasn't sure we'd ever bridge again. Later that afternoon, after Raoul left for work without another word, I sat alone in the living room, the letter spread across my lap. My phone rested on the coffee table. I pressed play on the recording from Lorraine's kitchen, her voice sneering through the speaker. That money was wasted on a sick kid anyway. Kids get sick all the time. She'll survive. I should have felt strong, armed with proof. Instead, fear gnawed at me. What if no one believes me? What if the court thinks I'm unstable? Tears blurred the paper until Maribel slid down beside me on the couch. She laid her head gently against my shoulder, her voice small but steady. Mom, you've always told me silence is power. But maybe now, silence is dangerous. Her words pierced through the fog of my fear. I looked down at her. My daughter, only 13, yet already braver than most adults I'd known. I wiped my cheeks, inhaling shakily. You're right. I can't stay quiet anymore. Maribel squeezed my hand. her eyes shining with that fierce determination I'd come to recognize. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something stir inside me. Not just anger, but resolve. That night, as the house grew quiet and the desert wind rattled the windows, I spread the documents across the table. Lorraine thought she'd won, flipping the story and painting me as the villain. But she didn't know I had her words captured, her arrogance sealed in digital ink. I whispered to myself, steady and certain, "This isn't over." And then came the phone call that changed everything. It was Maribel's voice, tight with fear. "Mom, I'm at Grandma's. She locked me in the spare room." The world tilted under me. My pulse roared in my ears. "What? Why would you go there?" I wanted to show her I wasn't afraid, but she got mad when I told her she couldn't just take our money. "Mom, she turned the lock." I didn't even stop to grab my coat. My keys rattled in my shaking hands as I ran out the door. The drive across town blurred. Streetlights, red signals, horns honking behind me. I barely breathed until I pulled up in front of Lorraine's neat little house, the porch light glowing like a warning. She opened the door before I could knock, that smug smile plastered across her face. "Took you long enough?" she drawled, her voice sticky with false sweetness. "Maybe this will teach you not to meddle in things you can't handle." I pushed past her, my chest heaving. "Where is she?" "Safe," Lorraine said, folding her arms. "Safer than she is with you." I spotted the spare room door down the hall and lunged for it, but Lorraine stepped in my way. "You know, Odessa, the courts don't look kindly on unstable mothers. Maybe you should calm down before you make things worse." Her words cut deeper than any slap could. The sound of a car pulling up outside made her smirk widen. Raoul walked in, confusion etched across his face. "What's going on?" Lorraine jumped at the chance. "Your wife's hysterical again, Raoul." She barged in here screaming, and poor Maribel was terrified. I had to lock the door for her own safety. "That's a lie." My voice cracked as I turned to Raoul. "She locked our daughter in there like a prisoner." Lorraine held up a piece of paper like a magician revealing her trick. "Then explain this." She waved the note with theatrical flair. "Your daughter's own words. She says she feels unsafe with her mother." Raoul's face drained of color. He took the paper with trembling hands, scanning the handwriting. I wanted to snatch it from him, to scream, but I forced myself still. "Raoul," I said carefully, "she forged that. Look at the way the letters lean. That's not Maribel's handwriting." Lorraine's laugh was cold. "Of course you'd say that." From behind the locked door came a muffled sound, and then I caught it. The faint scrape of something sliding under the gap. My heart leapt. I bent down quickly, pretending to steady myself, and found Maribel's phone. I tucked it into my pocket without Lorraine noticing, my fingers trembling. Raoul was still staring at the note like it held the answer to everything. "Raoul," Lorraine said softly, twisting the knife. "You don't have to believe me, but ask yourself this. Do you really want to gamble your daughter's safety on Odessa's word?" He rubbed his temples, torn in two. I don't know who to believe anymore." Those words nearly shattered me. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. But that night, back home after finally prying Maribel from Lorraine's clutches with a threat to call the police, I sat with her phone in my lap. My hands shook as I opened the recording she'd managed to capture. Lorraine's voice hissed through the speaker. "Your mom's weak. Once I have custody, I'll make sure you never see her again." The sound of it hollowed me out and filled me with fire all at once. Proof. Undeniable. Maribel leaned against me, whispering, "See, Mom? We've got her now." I kissed the top of her head, whispering back, "We do. But we have to be careful. Timing is everything." Later, as the house settled into uneasy silence, I pulled my journal closer, my pen pressing hard into the page. If silence gave her power, I'll turn it against her. For the first time in weeks, I felt the stirrings of control. Lorraine thought she had won. She had no idea the tide was about to turn. The next morning, I walked into the courthouse with shaking hands and a plan Lorraine would never see coming. The building smelled of coffee and floor polish, the kind of sterile scent that makes you feel small before you've even spoken a word. I gripped Maribel's hand as we climbed the steps together. Raoul walked ahead, shoulders stiff, and Lorraine strutted at his side like she owned the place. She was dressed sharp, pearls gleaming under the fluorescent lights, her lips curved into that smirk I'd come to despise. She leaned toward Raoul, whispering loud enough for me to hear. "She's about to lose everything." My stomach nodded, but I didn't let her see me flinch. We filed into the courtroom. Lorraine's lawyer, a slick man in a gray suit, placed a folder on the table with a little flourish. I knew what was inside before he even opened it, the so-called note Maribel had written. When the judge called the case, Lorraine's attorney rose smoothly. "Your Honor, this case is about a child's welfare. My client, Mrs. Lorraine Whitfield, is deeply concerned that her granddaughter is living in an unsafe, unstable environment." He pulled out the note, holding it up like a holy text. "This letter, written by Maribel herself, says she feels unsafe with her mother. That is why we are here today." The judge adjusted her glasses, scanning the page. "We'll hear from both sides," she said, voice measured. My turn came. My knees nearly buckled as I stood, but I steadied myself with a breath. "Your Honor, with your permission, I'd like to submit an audio file." Lorraine shifted in her chair, still smiling, but I saw her hand tighten on her purse strap. The judge gave a short nod. "Proceed." I pressed play on the small recorder I'd brought. Lorraine's voice poured into the room, cold and venomous. "Your mom's weak. Once I have custody, I'll make sure you never see her again. That money wasn't wasted. It's mine to use as I please." A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. The bailiff froze mid-step. Raoul's head snapped toward his mother, horror washing over his face. Lorraine's lawyer blinked, clearly blindsided. That's not real." Lorraine's voice cracked, her face flushing. "It's doctored. You can't—" Before she could finish, Maribel stood, her little hands clutching the edge of the table. Her voice was steady, braver than I'd ever heard it. "I recorded it. She said it right in front of me." The judge leaned forward, her eyes narrowing at Lorraine. "Is this true?" Lorraine sputtered, eyes darting between Raoul and me. "She's a child. She doesn't know what she heard." Raoul buried his face in his hands. When he finally looked up, his expression was hollow. "Mom, how could you?" Lorraine tried to recover, her voice turning sharp. "I did it for her. Odessa is unstable, you've seen it." "She can't handle the responsibility." "Enough," the judge cut in, her voice ringing like a gavel. "What I've just heard is deeply concerning. Mrs. Whitfield, this court will be reviewing your actions, including potential charges for fraud and coercion. You are ordered not to contact your granddaughter until further notice." Lorraine's face crumbled. For the first time, the mask slipped completely. She turned to Raoul, reaching for him. "Say something! Tell them!" But Raoul shook his head, his eyes wet. "I can't defend this. Not anymore." Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I simply reached for Maribel's hand, and together we stood. As we walked out, I heard the judge instruct the bailiff to escort Lorraine from the courtroom. I didn't turn back. In the hallway, Raoul caught up, his voice breaking. "Odessa, I don't know how to fix this." I stopped just long enough to look him in the eye. "This isn't about fixing us, Raoul. It's about the truth." Then I turned, guiding Maribel toward the exit. The cameras flashed as we stepped outside. reporters already gathering, strangers whispering. And for the first time, I didn't feel small under the weight of their eyes. Outside the courthouse, as cameras flashed and strangers whispered, I realized the battle was won, but the war inside me was far from over. 2 weeks later, that truth still echoed in every quiet corner of my home. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, though shadows lingered in the hallways where Lorraine's voice once haunted my thoughts. I moved slowly through the living room, unpacking a box I hadn't touched in months. It wasn't just clutter anymore. Each item felt like a piece of my life I was reclaiming. Maribel sat cross-legged on the couch, hugging a worn stuffed bear to her chest. That bear, the one Lorraine once mocked her for keeping, calling it babyish. Now it looked like armor in her small hands. She glanced up at me with wide, steady eyes. "We're okay now, right, Mom?" I crouched beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "We will be," I said softly, "because we still have each other." The doorbell rang. For a moment, my chest tightened, old fear rising, expecting bad news again. But when I opened the door, it was Mrs. Green from next door, balancing a casserole dish wrapped in foil. She gave me a warm, almost motherly smile. "I thought you could use a break from cooking. Everyone saw what you did in court, Odessa. You showed strength." Her words sank deeper than I expected. Strength. For so long I'd felt invisible, brushed aside by people who were supposed to love me most. Yet here was a neighbor, someone barely part of my life, seeing me clearly. I thanked her, and when I closed the door, I realized I didn't feel quite so alone anymore. That evening, as the desert sky turned dusky pink, Raoul knocked on the door. I hesitated before opening it. He stood there with his head low, eyes rimmed red, like he hadn't slept in days. "Can we talk?" he asked. We sat at the kitchen table, the silence between us heavier than words. He rubbed his hands together. "I was blind. I let her control too much. I thought I was protecting the family by keeping peace, but all I did was let her hurt you. Hurt Maribel." His voice cracked. "I don't know how to fix this." I listened, but I didn't soften. My voice was calm, steady. "Raoul, I'm not here to rebuild what you broke. You chose silence when we needed truth." His eyes glistened, but I didn't waver. "I'm not looking back anymore. I have to protect Maribel and myself, even if it means moving forward without you." He looked like he wanted to argue, but no words came. Eventually, he stood and left, shoulders slumped, leaving behind only the faint scent of his cologne and the echoes of choices that couldn't be undone. Later that night, Maribel padded into my office, clutching that same stuffed bear. She climbed into the chair beside me, eyes sleepy but full of trust. "Mom," she whispered, "we're really going to be okay, right?" I kissed her forehead. "Yes, sweetheart. Because we're building a new kind of okay, one no one can take away." After she went to bed, I pulled out a small fireproof safe I'd bought earlier that day. I carefully placed Maribel's college fund documents inside, new accounts I'd opened in my name alone. On top, I laid the USB stick with Lorraine's recorded confession, not because I wanted to dwell on it, but because it was proof of what we had survived. A reminder of why silence would never again be an option. I sat back, staring at the closed safe, my chest both heavy and free. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who gamble with your heart. But when you choose truth over silence, you win more than a courtroom battle. You win yourself. Tell me, would you have forgiven him? Or walked away like I did? And as I locked that safe, I realized the real inheritance I'd leave Maribel wasn't money. It was the strength to never let anyone silence her again.